Today, we're going to be covering the entire story of Kotaro Lives Alone, an anime about a 4-year-old orphan living completely by himself that will genuinely change your entire perspective on life. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. The story follows a boy named Kotaro Sato. One day, he moves into the Shimizu apartment complex, and while visiting a convenience store, he asks the clerk for tissues. She gives him small packs meant for kids, but he actually wants 5 full-size tissue boxes. The clerk thinks he's shopping for his mom. Kotaro politely thanks her. As he's about to leave, he spots toy swords at the counter and decides to buy one for himself. After arriving at his new apartment, he makes a nameplate for his door. Suddenly, he hears his neighbor getting slapped by his girlfriend for oversleeping and forgetting about their date. The guy starts making excuses, saying he was up all night working on his manga. When he apologizes, he calls her Hiriko.
But let me make it up to you, okay, Hiroko?
Yeah, that's not her name. It's Hiromi. After that, Kotaro comes to introduce himself and gives Shin Karino a box of tissues as a gift, telling him he just moved in as his new neighbor in room 203. But when Karino asks about his parents and if it's even allowed for tenants with kids to rent an apartment, Kotaro says that no one is living with him and that he's renting the whole apartment by himself, leaving Karino baffled as he tries to process it. But his hunger kicks in. Since he hasn't washed dishes for a week, he gives up and goes to take a dump. Later, Kotaro comes over and asks why the apartment has no bathtub. Karino explains the building doesn't have one. Most people usually go to a nearby bathhouse, but Kotaro misunderstands it as a battle house and gets ready to fight. Karino obviously corrects him and gives him a free coupon for the bathhouse. Kotaro thanks him before leaving, but when Karino turns on the TV and hears news about child abductions happening lately, he starts to worry and decides to go after him. Karino helps Kotaro with bathing. When soap gets into Kotaro's eyes, he asks Karino for help. Karino helps wash his hair, and we see Kotaro contradicting himself, saying that he can do it himself, but still lets him, since it feels nice to have someone wash his hair after a long time. Later, after finishing their bath, as they're walking back to their apartment, Kotaro says he would like to come here every day. Karino tells him it would be way too expensive. Kotaro casually says his wallet is quite full, unlike Karino's. After that, Karino asks if he's really renting the entire apartment by himself. Kotaro says yes, explaining the landlord allowed it because he could pay the rent. Then Karino brings up his parents, and Kotaro says he no longer has them, making Karino realize he said something pretty insensitive. So he admits he also lives alone without parents. Kotaro says that means Karino must feel lonely.
Are you lonely?
Who, me?
Then immediately stops himself, thinking it might be too sensitive, and just walks him back home. The next day, when Kotaro goes out to buy groceries, Karino worries and follows him. On the way, they meet another neighbor, Mizuki, who thanks Kotaro for the tissues, then looks at Karino and assumes he's Kotaro's dad, but Karino quickly denies it, saying they're just neighbors. Later, Kotaro and Karino enter a supermarket where people keep commenting on how much they look like father and son. When Karino asks Kotaro how old he is, we find out he's only 4 years old. Karino starts to panic, wondering if Kotaro could really be his son, cause 4 years ago he was with his girlfriend, which terrifies him. So he asks Kotaro if he remembers his parents, but Kotaro gets annoyed and tells him not to follow him because he doesn't want people to think they're father and son, saying Karino doesn't look like his father at all, which calms Karino down. On the way back, Kotaro asks Karino if he can come over to watch cartoons at his place, then apologizes for being mistaken as his son, but Karino asks why he's apologizing. Kotaro says it's because he thinks Karino wouldn't want to be his father and might feel embarrassed to have a son of higher status, since Kotaro sees himself as a feudal lord. Dude, what? Yeah, this whole time, Kotaro has been acting like a feudal lord. And if you're wondering why a 4-year-old would act like this, well, we're gonna find out soon enough. Cut back to Karino, who's left completely speechless, just like me. Later, when they return to the apartment, Karino runs into Mizuki, who apologizes for mistaking him for Kotaro's father. Karino says he was also shocked, but he feels bad thinking about Kotaro's situation. We cut to Mizuki getting her paycheck. On her way home, she gets a message asking for money. The next morning, while Kotaro and Karino are taking out the trash, Kotaro suddenly stops and starts staring at Mizuki's door. Karino tells him it's rude to stare even if the door is open, but when he gets closer, he sees her her unconscious on her doorstep. At first, he thinks she's dead, but then sees the empty cans. Yeah, she's just passed out after drinking too much. Kotaro wakes her up, but she is still drunk. He asks Karino to watch her while he goes to buy an ice pack, but Karino refuses to let him go alone and follows him. On the way to the store, Kotaro trips and gets hurt, but instead of crying, he holds in his tears and keeps going. Later, they return to Mizuki with a cold drink. Kotaro tells her to wrap it in a towel and place it on her eyes, saying it will help with swollen eyes after crying for too long. Mizuki tries to deny it, saying she just gets emotional when she drinks, but Kotaro doesn't believe her and says it wouldn't change how he sees her even if she cried, because crying doesn't mean weakness, which touches Mizuki's heart. After leaving her, Karino questions how Kotaro knew she was crying and what would help. Kotaro replies that he has seen adults cry many times, so he knows how to deal with it. The next day, Karino gets his manga rejected by his editor. He says the story is good, but his drawings need improvement. After the editor leaves, Karino keeps working, but hurts his lower back and struggles to get up from his futon. Then Kotaro comes in with both knees covered in bandages, saying he got them while fighting pigeons when he was cleaning the floor. Karino says that's a lot of bandages. Kotaro explains he had to do it properly, clean everything, cover the wounds fully, and disinfect them while enduring the pain. Then he indirectly asks Karino to praise him. So Karino says he did a good job before asking him for help with his back. After that, Karino draws a tuna salmon. What is that word? After that, Karino draws a Tono Salmon, Kotaro's favorite cartoon character, on his bandages as a thank you, and Kotaro finally smiles for the very first time, which catches Karino off guard since he's never seen him smile before. That smile inspires him to keep working on his manga. Just then, someone rings Kotaro's doorbell, and Kotaro and Karino peek outside. They see a guy who looks like a gangster. His name is Isamu Tamaru, who gives Karino a death stare, but then starts fawning over Kotaro and thanks him for the tissues from the other day, dragging him along to play. While Karino quietly follows, Tamaru gives Kotaro a Tono Salmon plushie. Kotaro accepts it, but tells him not to try hugging or patting his head again. Tamaru is just happy he took his gift, admitting he was about to throw it away since his ex-wife doesn't let him meet his son. Kotaro asks if he's using him as a replacement for a son and returns the plushie, saying it isn't a real gift and it's just a lie. Tamaru, realizing his mistake, apologizes. As they're heading back, Kotaro asks Karino if drawing on the bandages was also a lie. Karino says he put a lot of effort into drawing them for him, then asks if he really thinks it was all a lie. He pauses for a second before asking if his smile was a lie too. Kotaro says it wasn't and runs back to his room. Before closing the door, he tells Karino not to get full of himself. But inside of his room, Kotaro happily plays with his Tono Salmon bandages.
Tono Salmon, Tono Salmon.
The next day, Kotaro comes to Karino's room to watch his favorite cartoon Tono Salmon, since his TV hasn't arrived yet. While watching, he repeats everything Tono Salmon says. Karino finds the cartoon ridiculous, and later that night, after looking it up, he learns the show isn't even popular, which makes him wonder why Kotaro is so obsessed with it and copies Tono Salmon's way of speaking. But he doesn't think much about it since Kotaro's TV will arrive tomorrow, so he won't have to watch this stupid show anymore. The next night, the duo go to the public bath again, where Kotaro keeps singing the Tono Salmon theme song. Karino asks what he likes about that show. Kotaro says he knows the story isn't great, so Karino asks if he likes the character. But Kotaro says it doesn't matter if he likes him, it just has a special place in his heart. As he's saying that, Kotaro notices a kid crying, refusing to leave with his dad. He walks up to the kid before saying he should be grateful to have someone who loves him, and to remember that when he feels sad. After hearing that, the kid stops crying and leaves with his father. As they head out, Kotaro says that kid will be fine because he is cared for and very fortunate, and he won't have to look for guidance in a TV show. As they get ready to leave, Kotaro clears up that Tono Salmon does have a special place in his heart, but he no longer needs guidance from it because he has already grown into an exceptional adult. Karino points out that he's wearing his shirt backwards, but Kotaro brushes it off, saying he was just testing him. Later that night, Karino falls asleep from working while Kotaro watches Tono Salmon as usual. But then Kotaro learns the next episode will be the finale. The next morning, Karino wakes up to the doorbell ringing. After opening the door, he sees Tamaru informing him that today is the Tono Salmon finale and asking what they're gonna do about it. Karino thinks a bad show like that was bound to end, but Tamaru points out how Kotaro will be upset because it's his favorite show, and he acts the way he does because he wants to be like Tono Salmon. Karino agrees, saying Kotaro repeats every line Tono Salmon says when they watch it together, which makes Tamaru jealous. So he tries to beat up Karino for keeping Kotaro all to himself. Later, Kotaro is seen sitting outside on the street performing a Tono Salmon impression, where a girl and her boyfriend stop to watch. The girl enjoys it, tries to give him money, but Kotaro refuses refuses and instead gives her 10 yen for enjoying the performance, while ignoring her boyfriend since he didn't enjoy the act. More people come to watch, and Kotaro only rewards those who truly enjoy his act. As he waits for more people, he remembers how his mother used to smile when he performed Tonosaman for her. Later that night, as Kotaro waits for the Tonosaman finale, Tamaru and Karino visit him to watch it together since the show is ending today. Karino thinks Kotaro will stop speaking like a feudal lord, but Kotaro declares that even if the show ends, he will still keep talking that way. The trio watches the show and repeats every line Tonosaman says, and we see Tamaru arguing with Karino for not taking it seriously. Kotaro smiles hearing them bicker, and charges them 10 yen for enjoying the show. After all that, everyone heads back home. Karino asks if he'll be okay at night now that Tonosaman is over, but Kotaro says he doesn't need TV anymore and he can handle sleeping alone. The next day, Kotaro and Karino go to the bathhouse again. Karino complains they don't need to go every single day since it's really expensive, but Kotaro says he has enough money and tells Karino to stay home if he can't afford it. However, when they arrive, they see that the bathhouse is closed for maintenance. Karino says they should just head home since there's nothing they can do about it, and there isn't any other bathhouses nearby. The next morning, they meet again while taking out the trash, but Kotaro keeps staring at Karino, who doesn't truly understand why.
You could have done that without me moving.
What is it?
What is up with you today? What was that all about?
Later, Karino asks Mizuki if she's seen Kotaro or noticed anything strange about him, but she hasn't seen him today. Later, when they go to the supermarket, Kotaro keeps his distance from Karino. Even when paying at the register, he doesn't get close to take the groceries, so he calls Karino from outside to collect them. But when Karino gets close to give them to him, Kotaro backs away and tells him not to come near him because he hasn't bathed for 24 hours and smells just like the person who's clipping these and sending them to the members. You smell, bro. Karino says he doesn't care even if Kotaro smells a little, but Kotaro just runs back home. Mizuki arrives there and tells Karino to use his brain before speaking. She suggests that Kotaro might have had trauma from being dirty in the past and is now trying to be perfect so people won't hate him. Later, Mizuki peeks into Karino's place and finds Kotaro sitting in the kitchen sink trying to bathe. Kotaro says he has to do it because otherwise his neighbor will hate him. Karino secretly hears this. He wants to tell Kotaro that no one would hate him for missing a bath, but in the end, he decides once the bathhouse reopens, he'll take Kotaro there every single day. Mizuki tells Kotaro the bathhouse will open tomorrow. He asks her to go with him to the bathhouse, which makes Karino annoyed since Kotaro asked her instead of him. But Mizuki refuses, saying she has to work at that time. That night, Kotaro can't sleep and goes outside, where he runs into Mizuki returning from work. She asks what he's doing out so late. Kotaro wanted to say he couldn't sleep, but instead just goes back to his room. The next morning, he meets her again, and she notices the dark circles under his eyes. That same night, Mizuki comes home and sees Kotaro's lights are still on. The next morning, Karino also notices the dark circles while taking out the trash. They run into Mizuki, who invites Kotaro for a sleepover since she has a day off. Kotaro agrees. They spend the whole day together, even taking a bath, going to a restaurant, and watching TV before sleeping. Kotaro, trying to be a gentleman, offers his arm as a pillow, and Mizuki accepts, but it still doesn't help him sleep. The next morning, Karino finds him looking even worse. Kotaro admits he hasn't been sleeping for days because of nightmares, but says last night was different, explaining he couldn't sleep because it was his first time sleeping next to a woman. Sorry, what? Isn't Kotaro like 4? Hello? Like, hold on. Alright, man. We cut to Karino preparing his futon to invite Kotaro for a sleepover, thinking it might help. But the next morning, Kotaro wakes up feeling refreshed from a great sleep because he had a great dream about Mizuki where they were cuddling each other while sleeping. Karino gets annoyed, thinking all of his effort was wasted. After some time, we see Kotaro going to enroll in a kindergarten. He arrives alone and the receptionist asks where his parents are, but Kotaro says he doesn't need any adults for this. After getting his number, he sits in the hall. Seeing all the other kids with their parents, he feels a bit lonely, but he stays confident that he can handle it alone. Then a kid nearby asks why he's alone. Kotaro replies that his parents are ninjas and are actually there, but nobody can see them because of their hiding skills. Meanwhile, Karino is brushing his teeth and gets annoyed remembering how Kotaro acted this morning. He had asked where he was going, but Kotaro refused to tell him and even warned him not to follow. Then Mizuki and Tamaru show up looking for Kotaro, but Karino says he doesn't know where he went. Just then, they see a girl wearing the same hat as Kotaro, whose mother drags her along, saying they're gonna be late for the entrance ceremony. So they rush to school and...
Are you all his guardians?
Yeah, his father.
All families are a little complicated.
After that, they run inside talking about how they almost missed such an important event. Karino sits next to Kotaro, tells him not to do everything alone and that he can rely on others. But Kotaro acts like he doesn't understand what he means. Then Tamaru arrives and Mizuki gives Kotaro a box of donuts. Seeing them all there, Kotaro asks for help putting on his badge, so Karino fixes it for him. We cut to Kotaro on his first day at kindergarten. At lunchtime, everyone brings homemade lunches while Kotaro got his from a shop, so he takes pictures of theirs to copy next time. Later, he makes his own lunchbox at the shop, and when he brings it in the next day, it amazes his classmates. When Karino comes to pick him up, Kotaro notices the other kids talking about making their lunch together with their parents, so he starts asking strangers for help at the shop and gathers everyone's ideas to make his lunch. Even though his classmates say his previous one looked better, Kotaro says they are too young to understand its value, then smiles, saying this one is far better than yesterday's box because he made it with others. As the episode ends, we see him waiting at the shop, wanting to properly thank everyone who helped him make his lunchbox. The next day, Kotaro keeps staring at a man handing out balloons to kids outside of a shopping mall and asks him why he isn't flying away while holding so many balloons. The man laughs it off and asks what color he wants. Kotaro says red and blue, but since he can only choose one, he picks red. Moments later, he changes his outfit and comes back to ask for another balloon. The man realizes it's the same kid, but Kotaro insists they are different because he's wearing a hat, saying the first one was for his younger sister and now he needs one for his brother. Then he returns wearing glasses and asks for a pink one for his mother. After that, he even imitates Tamaru to get a blue one for his dad. The man gives him the balloon and assumes he will come back again to get one for himself, but Kotaro doesn't return. Instead, he brings all the balloons to Karino and asks him to draw the faces of a boy, a girl, and their parents on them since he's good at drawing. Karino feels happy hearing that and draws on the balloons. Kotaro writes their titles on the back. Later, when the balloon man is returning from work, he sees Kotaro playing with all the balloons tied around his waist. At first, he feels like he got tricked by a kid, but...
Did I get late?
Yeah, he notices the names written on them and realizes Kotaro made them as substitutes for his family. Seeing the lonely boy playing like that makes him emotional, hoping the balloons will last a long time. The next day at school, Karino comes to pick up Kotaro, and the teacher mistakes Karino for his older brother. As they walk home, Karino gets a call from his editor asking to meet about his manga, so he tells Kotaro he has to go for work and they'll probably get heavily criticized again. Despite being told not to come, Kotaro follows him into the meeting, where the editor mistakes him for Karino's son. After clearing that up, Karino shows his latest drawings, but the editor roasts his drawings again. Kotaro steps in and says the drawing is good enough, telling the editor to stop overthinking and to show his own skills before criticizing others. Karino shuts him up before things escalate, and then goes to the washroom. During that time, Kotaro asks the editor for his honest opinion on Karino, and he says Karino's strength is his storyline, but he's weak in other areas, explaining that he's harsh on Karino so that he can improve, and not to just bully him. Later, as they head home, Kotaro says the editor is actually a good person and tells Karino to do his best to make him proud. Editor, am I making you proud? Let me know. Karino is confused about what just happened back there and asks him why he came along in the first place. Kotaro says he was just repaying him for his kindness, adding that he will stay by his side as Karino's guardian angel, which secretly makes Karino happy. But he just tells Kotaro to do what he wants. The next time they visit the editor, Kotaro sides with him, and the two roast Karino's drawings together. After a little while, Kotaro visits Tamaru, who gets really excited that Kotaro actually visited him and jumps to hug him. But... he gets the usual treatment. Kotaro asks Tamaru to go shopping with him since he has the best fashion sense among the men he knows, saying he wants to become a well-dressed man. On the way, Kotaro keeps pointing the sword at him to maintain distance. They arrive at a shopping mall and start picking clothes. While trying on outfits, Tamaru asks which girl he's trying to impress. Kotaro says he isn't dressing for any girl. Tamaru presses him to be honest just as a policeman shows up and questions their relationship. Before things escalate, Kotaro comes out and asks if he looks cool, and everyone says he looks good. Later, on the way back, Tamaru asks again who he wants to impress. Kotaro says he just wants everyone to like him. He saw on TV that stylish people are liked, so he wants to be cool so that no one will hate him again.
Does he live around here? This neighborhood isn't safe with thugs like him wandering around.
Tamaru squats in front of him and asks if he's really that scared of being hated. Kotaro says yes. Tamaru tells him even stylish people get hated, so it isn't everything. Just then, another policeman approaches to question Tamaru, but Kotaro steps in and yells Tamaru is his neighbor and his friend. Later, while Mizuki is working at a bar, she finds Kotaro there as a customer. Mizuki is shocked and tells him to go home, but he insists on accompanying her, so she rushes to call Karino. But by the time she returns, Kotaro has already charmed a few workers with his cute acts. Karino arrives out of breath and drags him away, telling him not to cause trouble for Mizuki. But Kotaro doesn't give up and returns the next night, asking her again to come with him. Mizuki tells him this place isn't suitable for him, and if he wants to see her, he can visit her at home. This reminds her how, a few days earlier, when Kotaro was having tea and snacks with her, she received a call from the landlord about renewing her lease. And after ending the call, she mentioned she's been living there for a while and was thinking about moving out, but now she wants to stay for Kotaro's sake. However, Kotaro had already run off, thinking she was going to leave him before hearing that last part, and went to Karino for advice on how to spend more time with her, not understanding the situation. Karino casually suggests that if it were him, he would just go to the bar she works at. Kotaro did just that and now asks Mizuki how many times he needs to choose her for her to stay with him forever. She gently pats his head and tells him she will always stay by his side, and Kotaro hugs her. Moments later, Karino rushes in to take him back, but Mizuki decides to treat them both, only to regret it when the two of them start checking out other women and ignore her. A few days later, Kotaro and Mizuki are on a picnic when Karino shows up with ice cream. They give him the cold shoulder, saying he wasn't even invited, but he joins them anyways. Kotaro eats the ice cream messily and it gets all over his face. Mizuki and Karino try to take pictures, but Kotaro starts shaking his head, saying he is allergic to taking photos. They chase him around trying to get a picture, but Karino runs out of energy while Mizuki keeps chasing him. Karino gets an idea and pulls out his sketchbook to draw instead. Later, as they're heading home, Mizuki feels disappointed that they couldn't get a proper picture of him, and Karino mentions how Kotaro hid his face in the entrance ceremony photo. Kotaro says he doesn't like having his picture taken, and we see him recalling a painful memory from the orphanage, when an angry man came looking for him after seeing his photo online, shouting at the orphanage to bring his son out, while Kotaro was hiding under a desk. Ever since then, Kotaro has refused to let anybody take his picture, no matter how beautiful the memory is. The next day, as Karino walks Kotaro to school, he hands him a piece of paper. Kotaro opens it to see a sketch of him and Mizuki enjoying their picnic. He secretly feels happy, but says the drawing still needs work, and asks Karino to color it, though he admits it's still very good. A few days later, Kotaro gets a visitor who seems very nervous about meeting him. The woman is Kobayashi, a junior lawyer from the firm handling his case. She's been sent to give him his allowance. Kobayashi is surprised to see how young her client is, but Kotaro gives her a grand welcome before inviting her in. They toast with milk. Then he sings the Tono-saman theme song for her before serving her tandoori chicken. After all that, Kobayashi hands him the allowance, and Kotaro gives her a return gift. He asks where the money comes from, and she pauses, remembering her boss's instructions, that the money comes from his mother's life insurance. But she has to say it's from a kind donor since Kotaro doesn't know about her death. Kotaro says he's heard that before and explains he treats the lawyers kindly so his gratitude can reach the donor before asking if it's actually possible. Kobayashi agrees that it will. Before leaving, she meets her boss, who came to pick her up, who asks about the gift, and when she opens it, she finds a journal of Kotaro's daily life so the donor can know he's doing well. The episode ends with Kobayashi getting really emotional, promising to do her best to look after him. A few days later, Kotaro visits his friend Kakeru and ends up mistaking the housekeeper for his mom. She explains that both of Kakeru's parents are busy working, so she looks after him during the day. As the two boys bond over their love of Tono-saman, Kotaro notices Kakeru relies on her for literally everything. On their next meetup, Kotaro takes him out for survival training. They hike to a river where Kotaro shows him how to make a fishing rod from chopsticks and catches a crayfish. But when it grabs Kakeru's finger, he starts crying and asks for help. Kotaro tells him to man up and stop depending on others for every little thing. After catching enough crayfish, Kotaro says now they just have to cook them. Kakeru thinks it'll be gross, but Kotaro cuts him off, saying it is delicious, rich in protein, and good for growth. When Kakeru asks how he knows all of this, Kotaro simply says he has experience. After returning to their apartment, Kotaro explains the proper way to prepare them, saying the crayfish need to be properly cleaned before cooking.
Why can't we eat them without any cooking?
Promise me you will never attempt to eat them raw.
Sure, I promise.
So, to save time, he uses some he had already cleaned earlier. Kakeru, still confused, asks why they can't just ask his housekeeper to cook for them or buy food from the store. Kotaro shakes him and asks what he would do without money or adults. Kakeru realizes he wouldn't last a day. Kotaro says that's exactly why they need to be self-reliant. Kakeru follows along as they cook. He tells Kotaro that if he ever feels lonely, he can call him and they can go fishing again, which makes Kotaro Kotaro genuinely happy. The next day, Karino goes to pick up Kotaro from the school and finds he has a nosebleed. The teacher explains they were playing dodgeball and Kotaro took a hit to the face while trying to catch the ball. To avoid that from happening again, Kotaro asks Karino to teach him how to catch properly. But even during practice, he can't catch the ball no matter how gently Karino throws it. Kotaro asks if there's a secret, and Karino recalls that his high school volleyball coach once said throwing and catching a ball is like having a conversation. This lights up Kotaro's eyes, but when Karino asks him to practice throwing too, he refuses, saying he specializes in catching. The next day, during another dodgeball game, Kotaro uses his quote-unquote skill to protect his teammates by taking every hit to the face, refusing to dodge. When Karino picks him up, he finds him completely battered and decides to train him again, but the result is the same. Karino tells him to learn how to dodge, but Kotaro refuses, saying dodging would mean ignoring his friends who are throwing the ball, reminding Karino of what he said about it being like a conversation, and he doesn't want anyone to feel unheard. This brings back a memory of when he tried showing his drawings to his mom, only to be ignored because she was on her phone. Karino understands, but tells him that even if someone doesn't respond, it doesn't mean the message wasn't received. Those words reach Kotaro, and the next day, he finally manages to catch the ball. After that, Kotaro praises Kakeru for catching his throw even though he's on the opposing team. The next day, Kotaro asks a cat about his birthday. Karino says the cat wouldn't know it's birthday and asks why he's wearing a crown. Kotaro tells him about the birthday party at his school. As they head back to their apartments, Karino figures it out and asks if his birthday is coming up, which Kotaro confirms. The moment he says that, Mizuki and Tamaru jump out and declare they will organize a party for him. Kotaro doesn't really understand birthdays and thinks it's just about eating cake and blowing candles, so he's surprised when Mizuki says it's meant to celebrate being thankful for being born, because to Kotaro it had never occurred to him that being born was a good thing. Hearing that, everyone is left speechless, not knowing what to say. After that, Kotaro decides to start preparing for his birthday, training his lung capacity by blowing into empty bottles so that he can blow out all of the candles at once. The day of his birthday finally arrives. He is amazed to see his cake. While Mizuki and the others turn around to put on party accessories, Kotaro suddenly takes the cake and runs away, leaving a note saying he's borrowing it. Kotaro heads to a park and celebrates the birthday of stray cats, placing all the candles on the cake and sings to them before blowing off the candles, getting exhausted from blowing all of them at once. He tells the cats he's celebrating because he is glad they were born, and when they start licking him, he takes it as a sign that they are happy.
The guest of honor is late.
Soon, Kotaro's friend Takuya visits him too, saying he wants to run away from his house and invites Kotaro to join him. Kotaro asks what people do when they run away, and Takuya says they can go anywhere, be in charge, and have fun. Kotaro tells him to treasure his family, but Takuya replies that if they go missing, their family will start to treasure them instead. Kotaro sees his point and goes along.
This is so cool! Here you are, dear madam.
They buy snacks, play at the park, and just roam around. Takuya feels jealous seeing that Kotaro has no limits on the snacks he can buy and no one tells him to quote, do this or do that. But Kotaro says his life is nothing to be jealous of. But Takuya obviously doesn't get it. As night falls, Kotaro invites him over. As they enter, Takuya asks Kotaro about his parents and says they must be worried since he's been gone all day, only to see Kotaro has no one waiting for him. And when asked where his parents are, Kotaro says they are away on important ninja training. Hearing that makes Takuya feel guilty. He apologizes and runs back home, leaving Kotaro alone, thinking nobody would worry even if he disappeared. But then, Karino suddenly comes running, saying he went to the bathhouse 3 times to look for him, and Kotaro sincerely apologizes for making him worry. The next week, Kobayashi comes to visit Kotaro to give him his weekly allowance, and as usual, Kotaro puts on a little show for her. She tries her best to play along, but Kotaro notices she seems stiff and asks if she's hiding something. Kobayashi panics. But just then, a mailman arrives and leaves Karino's package with Kotaro since he isn't home. Kotaro opens it and finds beer, so he pours a drink for Kobayashi. She hesitates at first, but one drink leads to another and she ends up completely drunk. Kotaro takes a chance to ask if the money really comes from a kind donor. Kobayashi almost gives in to telling the truth, however, she tells him that the money is really from a kind person, then starts apologizing before passing out. Kotaro gently covers her with a blanket and thanks her for trying to protect his feelings. Later, Karino returns to get his beer, only to find Kotaro trying to comfort Kobayashi, who is crying after drawing a face on herself with a permanent marker while drunk. A few days later, Kotaro has his first parent-teacher meeting, and Karino attends as his guardian, but his shabby appearance and lack of enthusiasm make the other parents uncomfortable. As they leave, the other parents whisper that Kotaro's family situation is really messy, with 3 weirdos acting as his guardians, and even the head of the Parents Association feels sorry for him. Soon, she holds a meeting about the annual kindergarten festival and asks for volunteers, but nobody steps up. That is, until Karino raises his hand and says that he will handle everything himself, surprising everyone. On the day of the festival, Karino calls in help for Mizuki, Tamaru, his editor, and even the convenience store clerk, and together they manage to organize a fun and lively event. Afterward, the Parents Association leader thanks him, and Karino says it was hard work, but seeing Kotaro smile made it worth it. She is deeply moved by how much they care about Kotaro. Karino says they're doing their best to help him, but admits no matter what he or the others do, they are still not Kotaro's real parents, and it would be better if his real ones were there. However, she believes Kotaro is lucky to have someone like Karino as his guardian. A few days later at kindergarten, Takuya shows up with a runny nose looking for his favorite tissues, but he left it at home. His friends offer him tissues with cartoons on them. Kotaro tries to give him one too, but his are plain normal tissues, so the kids find them boring. Later, Kotaro goes shopping with Karino, and the clerk tells him the branded tissues he likes are back in stock. Karino is shocked at how expensive they are, and the clerk even shows them pricier ones, but Kotaro still buys them. On the way home, Kotaro lectures Karino about the benefits of expensive tissues, saying they are made with better ingredients and are very sweet. That night, while Karino is working on his manga, a TV program shows a man talking about how he had no money as a child and used to eat tissues to survive, saying higher quality tissues tasted sweeter. Yeah. Karino connects the dots and comes to the conclusion that Kotaro has been eating tissues to survive. The next time they go shopping, he asks Kotaro if he eats tissues, and Kotaro admits it. As he's about to buy the expensive ones again, Karino stops him and gives him regular cheap tissues, telling him he isn't alone anymore, so he doesn't need to eat tissues to survive. His words reach Kotaro, making him realize he is no longer on his own. Later that night, Kotaro prepares a full meal, naming each dish as he serves it. When Karino arrives for some apartment-related matter, he's surprised by how much food Kotaro has made. Just then, Mizuki also shows up, surprised that Kotaro can cook. The next day, Kotaro invites all of his neighbors over for dinner. Everyone eagerly waits, expecting a full buffet, but Kotaro only serves a single dish, which surprises them since they were hoping for a wider variety of dishes. Honestly, what were they expecting though? Like, you guys know how old Kotaro is. Karino asks if there's anything else. Mizuki and Tamaru immediately scold him for being insensitive. Yeah, it's kind of messed up expecting a literal 4-year-old to make a buffet. After that, they start eating, and they are blown away by how good it is. Kotaro feels happy hearing their compliments and thinks that since his friends are there to keep him company, he doesn't need to make multiple dishes and imagine them as friends anymore like he used to when he ate alone. The next day at the kindergarten, the teacher feels exhausted from the increased workload but still tries her best to smile in front of the kids. Before class, she tells them about the upcoming Parents' Day program and asks what roles they want in the skit. While writing on the board, it suddenly hits her that she has never seen Kotaro smile since she started teaching this class, which makes her think he is bored of her or not enjoying kindergarten. Kotaro suddenly volunteers to be the smiling son, surprising everyone since they've never seen him smile before. But Kotaro says he's good at putting on a smile and demonstrates his brightest smile to the class, leaving the teacher shocked at how good his fake smile is. Later, she asks Karino how often Kotaro smiles at home. Karino says he usually has a blank expression, and that he's only seen him smile one time. She then tells him what happened in class, how Kotaro showed his fake smile for the skit, but she doesn't want him to feel like he has to force a smile. Karino says he understands what Kotaro is going through and tells her that when he was around Kotaro's age, he lost both of his parents, so he started putting on a fake smile for everyone, and now he feels like Kotaro might be doing the same thing. Soon, the Parents' Day skit is held, and after it ends, the teacher compliments Kotaro's smile, saying it would be nice if he could show his real smile more, but Kotaro replies that it's easier for him to fake one. Then he points out that the teacher is the same and adds that it must be hard for her to smile all day, especially when she's tired, but she still has to put on a smile for everyone. The teacher is surprised that he noticed. Kotaro says he can see through fake smiles because he does it all the time, and promises to keep it to himself. The teacher just thanks him while patting his head. The scene then shifts to a mountain where a man is hiking up to watch a meteor shower to fulfill an old promise, and as he arrives, he finds Kotaro waiting and starts singing the Tono-sama theme song. Kotaro joins in as they sing together. We find out the man is Ryota, one of Kotaro's friends from the orphanage, and as they sit down, Kotaro apologizes for running away without saying goodbye, but Ryota tells him it's fine, saying he had to leave to stay safe since his father was searching for him. And besides, since he kept their promise to watch the meteor shower together, everything is alright. His words bring back an old memory for Kotaro, when Ryota was showing him beautiful pictures of the night sky he had taken with his camera. Seeing how fascinated Kotaro was, Ryota promised to teach him how to use a camera properly. Later, they spend a night taking pictures together on the mountain and promise to come back again next summer to watch a meteor shower. Back in the present, Kotaro apologizes again for taking his camera, saying he just wanted something to remember him by. Ryota looks at the photos they took together, then takes back the camera but hands him the memory card, saying memories are what truly matter. Though honestly, he could have just given him the camera too. The guy already had a better one around his neck. Then, as the meteor shower begins, the two of them start taking pictures, creating new memories together. A few days later, Kotaro visits Karino's editor, whose name is Fukuno, with his latest drawings after Karino collapses in the hallway from a cold. Fukuno is surprised that Kotaro came all the way there by himself. Kotaro asks why he's working non-stop even on a Sunday, and wonders if he's broke. Fukuno simply replies that he has a deadline to meet. Kind of like someone who's reading the script right now. Anyways, back to the scene, Kotaro advises him to eat properly, saying he looks like a ghost all the time. Fukuno wonders when this turned into a consultation session and replies that he's fine. His wife takes good care of him. Kotaro is shocked that this workaholic is actually married. Then Fukuno drops another bomb. He actually has a kid. Kotaro immediately takes the drawings back and tells Fukuno to go home and spend time with his kids, saying that if he works every Sunday, his child must feel lonely. Fukuno realizes he's at a sore spot, but then notices Kotaro's toy sword and tells him about the toy collection at their office. Kotaro says he isn't interested in toys, but the moment he hears that there's Tono-sama merchandise, yeah, he's going. At the office, Kotaro is amazed by the Tono-sama plushies and even a life-sized figure, taking pictures excitedly. But then he starts to feel like Fukuno is tempting him, and he begins to feel guilty, since that time should really be spent with his own child instead. The next day, Fukuno visits Karino, who says Kotaro was happy to see the merchandise, but seemed a bit sad. Fukuno says he didn't mean to make him feel that way, then reveals that he has a wife and child, which completely shocks Karino. Ignoring his reaction, Fukuno explains that Kotaro is far more mature than kids his age, so he thought letting him have some fun might help. He feels Kotaro shouldn't have to act so grown up and should be able to enjoy his childhood. As Fukuno is leaving the apartment, Kotaro approaches him and says he would like to visit the toy section again, but only on a weekday. A few weeks later, Kotaro and Karino go shopping and sees a shopkeeper who is pregnant. Not understanding how pregnancy works, Kotaro assumes she's getting fat from eating too much and decides to buy out all the food. The next day, he runs into her again and asks if she's getting fat because she has to eat all the leftovers from the shop. The woman laughs and explains that there's a baby inside of her, then tells him babies grow in the mother's belly when a man and a woman love each other. Kotaro then wonders if he was also made with love. She gently told him that his parents must have loved each other to give birth to him, and that children are their parents' treasures who bring them happiness. But after hearing that, the light fades from Kotaro's eyes. Later, he asks a cat if it remembers its parents loving each other, because he can't, and wonders if he ever fulfilled his role as their treasure, making them feel happy, and if he was ever able to make them love him, even if it was just a little bit. Soon, Kobayashi comes to give him his allowance, and as usual, Kotaro gives her a return gift. On her way back, she reads his weekly diary and finds that he wants to tell the kind donor that he will do his best to be a treasure. A few days later, a new tenant shows up and greets Kotaro, introducing himself as Aota, who will be living downstairs for a month. Aota gives him a small gift and immediately asks Kotaro to be his friend during his stay since he easily gets lonely, and Kotaro agrees. That night, Karino notices Kotaro heading to the bathhouse earlier than usual and finds out he'll be going there with Aota from now on. Kotaro says that even though he never made a promise to go to the bathhouse together, he still tells Karino in advance that they won't be going to the bathhouse together for a month. Karino says he doesn't mind, but then Kotaro adds that Aota will also be picking him up and dropping him off at school every single day, so he tells Karino not to get jealous. Karino goes full brick wall mode, insisting that he isn't jealous. At the bathhouse, Aota uses soap to shape a Tono-sama face, impressing Kotaro, and soon the two start spending more time together, even realizing that they like the same snacks. Then, as it starts to rain, Aota uses metal utensils to create makeshift instruments as Kotaro watches in awe. The next day, Aota greets Karino, who thanks him for taking care of Kotaro. After that, Aota asks how much he knows about Kotaro's parents. Karino immediately shuts it down, telling him not to dig into someone's private life. Aota backs off, but later that night, he calls his client and says that he's found his son. Yeah, this guy was very suspicious from the start. The next day, Tamaru notices Aota getting closer to Kotaro and can't hide his jealousy. He rushes to Karino and questions how he could let a stranger get so close. When Karino asks what he thinks about Aota, Tamaru immediately says the guy was sketchy from day one. Hearing that, Karino reveals that Aota was asking about Kotaro's parents. That night, while Aota is doing his research on Kotaro, Tamaru and Karino suddenly barge into his room. Tamaru confronts him, calling him a detective, then throws a bundle of money at him, telling him to spill everything. Aota shamelessly pockets the money and admits he's a private investigator, and Kotaro's dad hired him to track him down. We find out Kotaro ran away to escape his abusive family, and even though his father is under a restraining order, he still wants to know his location. Aota insists he will complete his job no matter what, and besides, because of the restraining order, Kotaro is protected by law, so nothing will happen to him. Then he goes further. saying a kid like Kotaro can't be happy living alone, questioning what right do they have over him as just neighbors. Tamaru gets furious and is about to jump him, but suddenly Kotaro comes out from nowhere and defends Aota, calling Tamaru a bully. Tamaru backs off because he doesn't want Kotaro to learn the truth, and Karino follows him, still thinking about everything Aota said. Meanwhile, Kotaro and Aota go to the bathhouse, but after they return, Kotaro bluntly asks him if he's going to tell his dad where he lives. Aota is caught off guard, never expecting the kid to figure it out. The next day, Kotaro rings Karino's doorbell and asks him to walk him to school, saying that Aota left in a hurry that morning. After hearing this, Karino quickly drops Kotaro off at the kindergarten and rushes back to tell Tamaru, who fears Aota has gone to report Kotaro's location. Mizuki soon joins them, and after hearing everything, the three decide to wait outside the school gate to protect him. When school ends, they surround Kotaro like bodyguards, insisting they have to keep him safe. Kotaro says he is strong enough to take care of himself, but they don't listen and keep following him everywhere. Later that night, he snaps at them and runs off, telling them not to treat him like a weakling. Back home, he starts training on his own. When Karino comes and asks why he wants to do everything alone, Kotaro says he just wants to grow stronger. The next day, the trio is still worried outside when Aota casually shows up. Tamaru is ready to throw hands, but Karino and Mizuki get him under control. Aota casually says he's just returned after reporting Kotaro's location to his father. Just then, Kotaro arrives, saying he was on his way to meet Takuya at the park. So Aota suggests that they all head there and continue the conversation. At the park, Karino asks Aota how Kotaro's father reacted. Aota says he was excited and plans to arrive by tomorrow. Hearing this, the trio starts thinking of ways to help Kotaro escape, but Aota says that won't be necessary, explaining that his job was only to find Kotaro, not to give away his real address. So he gave the father a fake location to protect Kotaro. They ask why he would do that, and yeah. Those are burn marks that he got from his parents when he was a kid. Aota explains he knows what Kotaro is going through. Tamaru still gets angry at him for lying to Kotaro, but Aota explains that Kotaro had already figured everything out, noticing that he used information he got from Kotaro's father about his favorite snacks and TV shows to get close to him, which made Kotaro very suspicious. When Kotaro confronted him about it, he begged Aota not to reveal his location until he became strong enough to face his father, leaving Aota speechless. So he simply agreed. Mizuki realizes Kotaro had been training so hard to defend himself from his abusive father. Just then, Takuya hurts his leg and starts crying, but Kotaro tells him it's foolish to cry, saying acting like that only makes him weak. Takuya points out that he sounds just like his dad. Kotaro tells Takuya that if he stays weak, he won't be able to live with his dad anymore just like him. We learn that Kotaro believes his weakness is the reason he couldn't stay with his father and blames himself for his father becoming a bad person. He thinks he needs to become stronger to live with him again. On their way back, Aota says he used to think it was his fault too, that if he had been stronger or better, maybe his parents would have loved him. He admits he believed that for a long time, always thinking that he was the one in the wrong, not his parents. And Kotaro right now is no different, thinking that if he becomes stronger, one day his father will change, stop hurting him, love him, and they can be a family again. Aota quietly says that some people are just not meant to be fathers, and nothing can change that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Karino can't take it anymore and suddenly challenges Kotaro to a race, even with a head start, but still loses to the 4-year-old kid. Then he asks what Kotaro plans to do. Become strong all by himself? Kotaro says yes, but Karino tells him that it won't work out. He needs a rival, someone to push him, someone to grow with, so that they can become stronger together. And that moment helps bring some light back to Kotaro's eyes. After Kotaro leaves for his apartment, Tamaru says it won't fix things in the long run. Karino knows that, but until Kotaro can figure things out on his own, he will stay by his side. Meanwhile, back at home, Kotaro eagerly prepares a protein shake for Karino, ready to train together. Some days later, a scammer calls Kotaro, pretending to be someone's nephew to trick an old woman into giving him money. But Kotaro is the one who answers the call and replies that he's just watching the house for the old lady, then tells him to call back in 5 minutes. The man does. Kotaro keeps repeating the same thing over and over until he gets frustrated. It doesn't take long for the guy to realize that Kotaro is just a kid living alone, which reminds him of his own son that he's been neglecting. The more he talks to Kotaro, the more regret starts to build up. Just as he's about to hang up, Kotaro says his voice reminds him of his father when he was kind and asks the guy to praise him. The man hesitates, but still goes along with it, telling him that he's doing a great job, that he's fantastic. Kotaro thanks him for saying that. After that, the man decides to quit being a scammer. The next day, as Kotaro and Aota return from school, Mizuki suddenly rushes out, saying her underwear is missing. Karino and Tamaru immediately come running, and she explains that it disappeared from her dirty laundry. Aota offers to investigate, and Kotaro joins in too, with a full detective outfit. It doesn't take long before Aota finds the missing underwear on Karino's balcony. Karino gets thrashed from all sides, desperately trying to defend himself. But before things escalate, Aota explains it was actually a cat that took it and points to the culprit. Kotaro praises Aota's skills, but Aota says his job isn't something to be proud of since it often involves deceiving people. The next day, Kotaro visits Aota, saying all the boxes from his room are missing, and asks for his help. Aota begins investigating, noticing ink on the table, which leads them to Karino, who says he borrowed the boxes, but they somehow disappeared too. Aota then notices Mizuki's perfume and goes to question her. She says the same thing, only leaving behind a pair of sunglasses that point to Tamaru. He also claims the boxes vanished, so he accuses Aota and asks to check his room. Aota agrees and leads him there, only to find Kotaro and everyone waiting with a surprise farewell party for him. Kotaro explains that at first their friendship may have started because of Aota's job, but even after that, he stayed and spent a lot of fun time with him, which makes them real friends. He then gives Aota the missing box as a gift. As Aota leaves, he opens it to find a magnifying glass for his detective work. A few days later, as Karino is about to pick up Kotaro from school, a girl named Kana approaches him and asks if she can play at his house. Kana's mother then speaks with Karino and asks if it would be okay for her daughter to visit. Karino checks with Kotaro, and he agrees. As they get home, Karino notices that even though Kana and Kotaro don't really hang out that much in class, she still considers him a friend just because they're classmates. Once inside, the two of them sit in silence for a while, awkwardly staring at each other, until Karino suggests they play cards. The next day, Kana wants to come over again, even though she admits playing with Kotaro is boring. Kotaro responds in his usual way, saying grown women find him more charming. Day after day, Kana keeps coming over to play, and one day as they're walking home, Kotaro asks if she would have more fun playing with her close friends instead. Kana replies that it's fine, saying her mother wants her to play with him. That's when Karino starts to connect the dots. He gets a small flashback where other women talk about Kana's father facing bankruptcy. That evening, when Kana's mother comes to pick her up, Karino confronts her, asking if she's been sending Kana there so she wouldn't have to see the current situation at home and compare herself to her more well-off friends. Karino tells her not to send Kana anymore, saying it's unfair to Kotaro, who is already struggling on his own. On the way back, Kana's mother asks her if she's had fun with Kotaro. Kana says it wasn't any fun, but she felt happy because her mother smiled when she went to play with him. Hearing that, the woman realizes her mistake and apologizes. Fast forward a few days, and winter is approaching. Kotaro starts exercising with Karino on his way to school. Once there, one of Kotaro's classmates, Kai, feels sick and asks to go home. The teacher takes him to the infirmary so he can wait for his mom to pick him up. During lunch break, Kotaro visits him and gives him an orange, saying the vitamins will make him strong like him so that he won't get sick. But the very next day, Kotaro himself catches a cold, yet refuses to admit it or get treatment, even when the teacher tries to take him to the infirmary. She calls Karino, who tells him to go home, but Kotaro insists that someone strong like him can't get sick. Just then, Kai tells the teacher he's still feeling unwell and asks to go home. As she takes him to the nurse, Kotaro follows and questions why he admits it so easily, asking if he isn't afraid of being seen as weak. Kai smiles and says he does want to play with everybody, but more than that, he doesn't want anyone else to catch his cold. Hearing that, Kotaro realizes his mistake and apologizes, saying Kai is actually very strong. Then he turns to Karino and admits that maybe being strong isn't just about physical strength. Karino takes him home with a box of oranges while Kotaro holds on to him. The next day, Kobayashi visits Kotaro and asks to come with her because she needs help with something. He agrees, and as they ride the train, she explains that she wants to buy an apartment with her savings but has no experience. So she wants help from a quote-unquote expert like Kotaro, and he happily agrees. As they reach the apartment, Kobayashi tries to make the place feel more like home, setting up a table, a futon, pillows, and even a bar of soap. But Kotaro doesn't seem happy. The truth is, he used to live in this apartment with his parents a long time ago. And it turns out Kobayashi already knew this. She brought him after talking with her boss. She knew it was risky, but she had to do it because of what he wrote in his weekly journal. He once wrote that he wanted to visit his old home again after noticing a mark in his new home that reminded him of a similar looking mark from his old home. He wanted to find the mark again in his old house and also see if his old home was still in good condition. So Kobayashi brought him there to fulfill that wish. A few days later, Kotaro is searching for edible herbs in the forest when he comes across 3 siblings who are also there to find herbs. The younger ones cling to their older brother, complaining that they are hungry, and he tells them to wait while he starts looking for some herbs. Kotaro asks why he's wearing slippers in such cold weather, and the boy replies that he can't even afford food, so shoes are out of the question. When he finds out Kotaro lives alone, see what I did there? It's the title. When he finds out that Kotaro lives alone, the older kid assumes Kotaro's parents must have left him too. Then he suddenly asks Kotaro to watch his siblings for a while, saying that he has something important to do, and Kotaro agrees. Fast forward 2 hours into the future, and that kid still didn't come back. As night falls, the younger siblings start crying, so Kotaro takes them back to their home, only to find the older brother eating chips alone. The boy sadly gives the chips to them and tells Kotaro that sometimes he just wants to be alone, without having to take care of his siblings all the time. He then explains that their mother left them, taking all the money they had after their father left her to marry another woman, only leaving behind her final words telling him to look after his younger siblings because he's their bigger brother. After hearing all that, Kotaro snaps and asks why he isn't keeping his mother's final words to take care of his siblings. The boy fires back, asking why it should even matter anymore, saying he thought Kotaro would understand since they're the same. Both of them were thrown away like trash, forgotten by their parents. Kotaro furiously denies it, saying they weren't thrown away, but the kid just gets fed up and leaves with his siblings. We cut to Kotaro getting a flashback of his mom telling him she can't stay with him anymore. She had to make this decision because she couldn't handle the abuse from Kotaro's dad. Before leaving, she tells Kotaro to take care of himself, and if he can do that, they might meet again. In the present, when Kotaro goes to see those three siblings again, he finds out that they've been taken away by Child Protective Services after neighbors reported that the parents had abandoned them for months. Even after finding that out, Kotaro still believes that they weren't thrown away. And the next morning, as Kotaro is vigorously cleaning his bed, he promises to live a good life, still holding on to his mother's last words in hopes of meeting her again. The next day, Kotaro treats Mizuki to some sweets the landlord gave him, and as usual, Karino invites himself in. As they chat and bicker, Mizuki gets a message from her boyfriend asking to meet, but she deletes the message. On the TV, a trailer for the new Tono-sama movie plays, and Kotaro's eyes start sparkling as he watches it. Mizuki asks if he's really that excited to see it, and Kotaro agrees, saying he wants to be strong like him. Hearing that makes her reflect on how much she's been letting her boyfriend control her. That night, on her way back home from work, her boyfriend blocks her, and the next morning, Kotaro and Karino find her wearing a mask. It doesn't take long for Kotaro to notice the injury on her face. Realizing that she can't hide it from him, Mizuki tells them the truth. For the last couple of months, her boyfriend had been using her for money, and last night when she tried to break up with him, he slapped her. Karino says they should call the police immediately, and Tamaru bursts in, saying that they should just beat him up. But Kotaro says the only real solution is for her to leave the apartment, quit her job right away, and go somewhere he can't find her, since he already knows where she lives. But Mizuki doesn't want to leave Kotaro and reminds him of her promise to stay with him. Karino still insists on calling the police, but Kotaro keeps pushing her to run away before things get worse. From then on, he keeps ringing her doorbell every day, trying to force her to leave, until she finally catches him and tells him she's not going anywhere, and that she'll deal with it properly by going to the police. Kotaro doesn't want her to do that, and says that if she calls the police, her boyfriend will become a bad guy. Kotaro then says he can tell she still has feelings for him, and she shouldn't be the reason for turning someone she still cares about into a bad person, that it will only make things worse. Kotaro is saying this because he believes he made his own father the bad guy, and he doesn't want her to make the same mistake as him. Hearing this, Mizuki breaks down and decides to leave. Oh, wait, okay, hold on. Let's stop the narration for a second, because I just gotta talk about this, okay? What the heck are they even talking about? Don't make them the bad guys? Bro, they already are the bad guys. Like, hello? One was abusing his wife and kid, and another is abusing his girlfriend and taking her money. What part of that is not bad? Abusing people isn't a personality trait. That's just being straight up human trash. Okay, dude, I get it. He's 4 years old, but come on. They gotta be messing with me at this point. It's actually insane. Where did the logic go? Anyways, back to the script. When she's all set to leave, Karino and Tamaru are there to see her off, but Kotaro wears a mask to hide his face from Mizuki. She then tells him not to blame himself for what happened to his father, saying that maybe something good might come out of it, and reveals that she's informed the police about her boyfriend after seeing his strength. Karino asks why she's still leaving if she's already gone to the police, and she explains that without any solid evidence, they can't do much. So she has to leave. Mizuki then apologizes to Kotaro for not being able to keep her promise of staying with him, but Kotaro says he doesn't remember any such promise between them. Hearing that, she starts crying and hugs him, remembering all the moments that they shared. Mizuki thanks him for everything and says that she loves him.
I love you.
After she leaves, Kotaro tightly clings to Karino and Tamaru, who tell him that it's okay to cry and that nobody will think he's weak. But Kotaro denies it, insisting that he isn't crying. A few days later, Karino wants to go watch the latest movie to get inspiration for his manga, and Kotaro generously decides to go with him as his guardian angel. At school, word spreads among the parents, and they start asking Karino to take their kids along too. Unable to refuse, he ends up babysitting 3 kids. Before they even step into the theater, the kids start causing trouble for Karino, getting overly excited about watching the movie. Kotaro wants to see the Tono-sama movie, but the 3 kids insist on a dinosaur movie, so Karino gives in. They then pester him to buy popcorn, and he does it just so Kotaro doesn't look bad in front of his friends. Even during the movie, he's too busy handling the kids to actually watch it. After the movie ends, the kids want to go to a toy store, but Kotaro steps in and says Karino is busy with work, so they shouldn't trouble him any further. Eventually, the kids leave with their mothers, and Karino collapses in exhaustion, swearing he'll never babysit them again. Kotaro sits quietly behind him, and when Karino asks what's wrong, Kotaro says he looked like he was having fun with the other kids, even though he was supposed to be with him as his guardian. Karino bursts out laughing, realizing Kotaro is jealous, and tells him they'll go watch another movie. This time the Tono-sama one. Kotaro agrees, saying he has no choice, and joins him for another round. Cut to the theater, and Karino is bored out of his mind, but this time Kotaro happily enjoys the movie. The next day, Tamaru comes rushing in to hug Kotaro, but as usual, Kotaro stops him with his katana. He then asks if he was able to meet his son or not, and Tamaru tells him he couldn't, and his ex-wife told him his son doesn't want to see him. Feeling bad for him, Kotaro invites him over for a glass of milk. A few days later, he notices a suspicious-looking kid snooping around the apartment. The kid looks like a delinquent, but when he realizes Kotaro lives there, his expression softens, and he asks if he knows his dad. Kotaro first guesses Karino, which makes Karino panic at the idea of being a father, but the kid quickly denies it, saying his dad isn't some unreliable wimp and is way cooler. Kotaro realizes he's talking about Tamaru, so they decide to wait for him to return and invite the kid inside. We find out his name is Yuta. Kotaro is surprised he actually came looking for Tamaru since he thought Yuta hated him, but Yuta firmly denies it, saying it's his mother who doesn't want him to see Tamaru. Just then, Tamaru comes to play with Kotaro, and his son is right in front of him. Tamaru asks why he came, and Yuta explains that his mom kept it a secret that Tamaru wanted to meet him. All this time, he thought his father didn't want to see him, but after finding out the truth, he decided to come meet him for himself. So he found Tamaru's address and came without telling his mother. Instead of being happy though, Tamaru tells Yuta to go back home immediately, saying that even if his mom hid things from him, he still shouldn't break the rules and should only meet him when allowed. Tamaru calls his ex-wife to come pick Yuta up and clears everything with her. Before Yuta leaves, Tamaru tells him that they'll meet next time according to the schedule and apologizes for sending him away like that. Yuta leaves in tears. Right after he's gone, Kotaro hits Tamaru with his sword, asking why he was so strict when his son finally came to see him. Tamaru explains that even though he wanted to meet Yuta more than anything in the world, he doesn't want him to grow up into someone who breaks the rules and isn't disciplined. Kotaro begins to understand that this is Tamaru's way of showing love. Tamaru says fathers often struggle to express their love for their sons, and says maybe Kotaro's dad was like this too. Kotaro is confused by what he means, and Tamaru explains that while it was wrong for his father to treat him badly, he still wants to believe that he loved Kotaro in his own way, because how is it possible for a father not to love his own child? As he says this, Tamaru starts tearing up thinking about Yuta again. Kotaro commends him for holding back his tears when his son was there. A few days later, a woman named Takei moves into the apartment Mizuki used to stay at and comes to greet Karino with a small gift. At first, Karino gets the impression she's a career-focused woman, but Takei quickly turns into a nagging mom, scolding him and Tamaru for not separating their trash properly. However, when she tries to praise Kotaro for doing it correctly, she starts to sweat bullets. Seeing this, Karino recalls how she panicked after learning there was a child in the apartment and realizes she's actually scared of being around kids. Karino thinks Kotaro should be able to notice this too, but instead of backing off, he starts playing tag with her. Takei tries her best to act natural and play along. The next day, Karino asks her to pick up Kotaro from school since he and Tamaru are busy. Despite her nervousness, she agrees. That night, Kotaro tells Karino that Takei came to pick him up in a taxi, saying the ride was fast and that she looked like she was pushing herself. Later, Karino apologizes to Takei for the sudden request and tells her it's clear she's uncomfortable around children, adding Kotaro must have noticed it too, so she shouldn't force herself to like kids. But Takei tears up as she says what kind of a woman is uncomfortable around kids, and how she's been judged for it many times. But now she's trying to change, and no one has the right to tell her to give up. The next day, Kotaro chases after Takei again and tells her that there was a time when his parents were uncomfortable with him too, but they overcame it, and he wants to help her do the same. Karino realizes that even though it looks like Kotaro is messing with her, he's actually trying to help. A few days later, Takei is seen watching Kotaro from a distance when Karino arrives and mentions that Kotaro seems to have changed lately. Karino straight up walks to him and bluntly immediately calls him fat, saying he's put on some weight. Kotaro simply agrees, saying eating properly is important to stay healthy, and also, to make things clear, he informs him that he hasn't eaten any tissues. As Kotaro is saying that, he notices Takei and starts chasing after her again. A few moments later, after escaping from him, Takei asks Karino what Kotaro meant by eating tissues. He explains that Kotaro used to do that when he was being neglected by his parents. Takei thinks Kotaro might be binge eating lately, and that's why he's gained weight, but Karino thinks it's something else. Takei then spots a poster for the Parents Association meeting about school meals and volunteers to join since she's studied nutrition. Karino warns her that it will be like walking into a haunted house for her, but Takei feels confident. However, she quickly regrets it after being surrounded by kindergartners. After calming down, she looks at the school menu and doesn't find any issue with it. But then, Kotaro's friends start giving him leftovers to run off and play. Kotaro accepts all of it and keeps eating, while the other parents praise him for not being picky. Takei asks if he's still hungry, and Kotaro replies that he's already full, but he can't waste food. Takei pauses. The teacher and the other parents notice this too, and later decide to tell the children not to give their leftovers to Kotaro. Takei feels relieved hearing that. The teacher invites her to come again, and she happily agrees. But then, Kotaro tells his friends to help him chase her, and she immediately feels like she's about to face her worst nightmare all over again. A few days later, we see that Kotaro has lost some weight. Yeah, all that chasing Takei probably helped. On the way back home, he finds an interesting looking rock and decides to add it to his little collection, the kind of things he sometimes admires while sipping milk. Later that day, Kotaro sends out tickets inviting his neighbors to view his collection, and they all gather outside of his home. He welcomes them in and proudly shows off the items that he's kept over the years. There's the iconic Tono salmon bandages, the drawings Karino made for him, and even the shopping bags he used when he was out with Tamaru. Takei notices a pair of gloves and asks about them. Kotaro says that they're the only thing his mother left behind, explaining that she used to wear them whenever she bathed him or fed him. Damn, thought his mother was somewhat decent, but yeah, I was wrong. Takei understands what that means. She then asks him to throw them away, but Kotaro refuses. She still keeps insisting, saying that they're not treasures. They are something he should not hold on to, as she remembers how her mother always wore gloves to dress her and take care of her. And one day she overheard her parents saying how disgusting her mother found it to even look at her, that touching her own daughter made her feel sick to her stomach. Yeah, that hits hard. Back in the present, Takei says that if he can't throw the gloves away, then she'll do it herself. But Kotaro stops her and apologizes, explaining that even though his mother felt uncomfortable around him, she still took care of him using those gloves, washing his hair, dressing him, and it was only because of these gloves that she was able to be close to him at all. Takei asks if he still loves her after everything, and Kotaro says of course, and that is exactly why he can't throw them away. Later, Takei tells Karino and Tamaru that she understands how painful it is to be treated like that, which is why she wanted to get rid of them for his sake. Karino says that even that painful memory is something Kotaro treasures because it's still a memory of his mother. Inside that room, Kotaro quietly thinks to himself that as long as he has these gloves, his mother won't have any trouble touching him when she comes back. A few days later, Kotaro joins the school soccer club and starts practicing with a senior named Hide. He tries to pass the ball but completely misses and refuses to accept it, claiming that it was just a feint. Later, Hide teaches him how to juggle, but Kotaro kicks the ball straight into his face. As Hide scolds him, the coach suddenly shouts at everyone to leave the field, which makes Hide flinch. Kotaro asks if he's okay, but Hide insists nothing's wrong. A few days later, their team has a match against another school. Both Hide and Kotaro feel confident. Hide scores a few goals, but when the opposing coach starts shouting, Hide freezes again. As the game continues, he keeps freezing every time he hears someone screaming and loses the ball. His trauma from being constantly yelled at by his parents takes over, and he starts shaking. Seeing this, Kotaro holds his hand and tells him a technique he learned to calm down, reminding him that no one here is angry at him. Hide slowly snaps out of it and returns to the game. Kotaro follows as Hide takes a shot, but the goalkeeper blocks it and the ball flies toward Kotaro. With perfect timing, he intercepts it with his face and scores the winning goal for the team. The next week, Kotaro goes to the dentist for a routine checkup. The clinic's receptionist is worried because they're losing patients since the doctor spends about an hour with the kids, but only around 30 minutes with adults. She asks what he does with all that extra time, and he simply says they talk, which makes her suspicious. So she secretly watches one of Kotaro's appointments and finds that they are just chatting about everyday things. After Kotaro leaves, the dentist calls her out for eavesdropping. She apologizes, but is still curious, so she asks why he spends so much time talking to kids. The doctor explains he once had a quiet girl with severe cavities whose mother clearly didn't care for her. After finishing their session, the dentist told her to come back in a week, but she returned a day before her scheduled appointment. The clinic was fully booked, so he asked her to come back the next day with her mother, but she never came back. Later, he learned she'd been taken into custody by Child Protective Services. He regrets the fact he didn't realize sooner that she was being neglected, and since that day, he has decided to spend more time with children during treatment so that they feel safe enough to speak up if something's wrong. Kotaro is just one of many such cases. He also had many cavities before coming to the clinic, but now they're slowly getting better. That evening, while it's raining, Takei finds Kotaro outside the station offering to share his umbrella with people who forgot theirs. He even invites her, saying he learned it from his mother, but she refuses since she already has one. Still, his little umbrella service is surprisingly popular as people line up to share it with him. The next day, she sees him doing it again, proudly getting his shoulder wet just to keep the other person dry. Later, she meets him again and points out his soaked shoulder, but Kotaro says that's the rule his master taught him. She got curious and asked about it. Kotaro explains that one day his master shared an umbrella with him and ended up getting wet because he held the umbrella mostly over Kotaro. And when he asked his master about it, he told him that sharing an umbrella is an act of care, and getting your shoulder wet is proof that you truly care about the other person. Takei realizes that the person he is talking about was his father from a time when he was still kind. Kotaro also remembers that when he shared an umbrella with his mother, she used to completely ignore him while focusing on her phone, leaving him soaked beside her in the rain. Yet he still believes that by doing this, he's showing his love to his mother. Hearing this, Takei understands the truth that Kotaro's mother just didn't care, but she doesn't say it out loud. Instead, she asks to share an umbrella with him, and this time she lets her own shoulder get wet while covering Kotaro. He realizes that by doing this, she's showing care for him, then asks if they can go on a walk again like this. A few days later, Kotaro and Karino are walking home while arguing about whether bananas belong in curry when a guy with a weird fashion sense suddenly stops them. Karino tries to turn back before he gets involved with him, but Kotaro runs up to him and calls him Tasuku, hitting him in a ridiculous way. Karino asks if he knows him. Kotaro explains that Tasuku was one of his friends from the orphanage, then invites him over. Kotaro prepares lunch while they talk. Tasuku asks about Karino, and after hearing that Kotaro considers him one of his dearest friends, he warns Kotaro not to trust Karino too much. He then mentions that Kotaro seems pretty stable now, and it's all thanks to his weekly allowances. And Kotaro agrees. After that, Tasuku asks him for a favor, but we don't know what it is yet. A few days later, Kobayashi visits Karino and gets her nose hit when he opens the door. She came to talk about how Kotaro has been asking her to increase his weekly allowance, and asks if Karino knows why. Later that night, Karino sees Tasuku leaving Kotaro's room and confronts him, asking if he knows why Kotaro suddenly needs money. Tasuku says that since they're best friends, he plans to move into another apartment together with Kotaro, and for that, they need extra money. He brushes off Karino's concerns, saying he's just a neighbor while he is Kotaro's best friend and knows what's best for him. Karino reports this to Kobayashi, who finds it strange that Kotaro has not mentioned anything about this to his lawyer. So she decides to run a background check on Tasuku just in case. After that, Karino talks to Kotaro to confirm if he's really moving out and needs the money for it. Kotaro confirms that he does, saying he needs the money to move in with Tasuku, leaving Karino silent, thinking that maybe this is better for Kotaro, since Tasuku might be the closest thing he has to family. After Karino leaves, Kotaro remembers when he was first sent to the orphanage. On his very first day, he started tearing his pillow apart, all while the other kids tried to stop him, saying it would make a mess. They all thought he was strange, but then Tasuku suddenly joined him, saying it looked fun. And once the others saw Tasuku playing with him, they started joining in too, making it easier for Kotaro to fit in. From that point on, Kotaro began spending time with Tasuku and Ryota, having fun together, and slowly, everyone started getting along with him. Ryota thought it was because Kotaro felt accepted thanks to Tasuku, but Tasuku brushed it off, saying it was nothing, and Kotaro just needed a friend. One day, a girl lost her wallet and immediately blamed Tasuku since he had been caught shoplifting before. While everyone else doubted him, Kotaro stood up for him and helped the girl find her wallet. Later, Tasuku thanked him for trusting him, and Kotaro just says he'll always trust him no matter what, but Tasuku replies that he shouldn't trust people that easily. Back in the present, Kobayashi visits Karino and tells him that Tasuku has multiple loans under his name and has been falling behind on payments, though recently he started paying them back little by little. They go to talk to Kotaro about it, trying not to be too direct, but Kotaro calmly says there isn't a problem because he trusts Tasuku with all of his heart. After that, Karino and Kobayashi decide to confront Tasuku and ask if he's using Kotaro's money to repay his debts. Tasuku loses his cool for a moment, but denies it. Suddenly, Karino grabs his collar and asks if he believes in Kotaro as much as Kotaro believes in him. He's caught off guard and doesn't understand what they're talking about. He starts to worry that they might have already said something to Kotaro. Just then, Kotaro returns from collecting garbage, and Tasuku quickly takes him inside. As they head to his room, Karino and Kobayashi overhear them. Kobayashi wants to interfere before they leave, but Karino stops her, saying it isn't their place to get involved, adding that Kotaro has faith in Tasuku, and even if it's misguided, he doesn't want to take that away from him. All they can do now is stay by his side. Inside the room, Tasuku asks if Karino and Kobayashi said anything to him, and Kotaro tells him that they were suspicious that he was lying about moving in together and taking the money. Tasuku gets nervous and tells him not to believe them, but Kotaro already knew the truth from the beginning beginning, saying he noticed Tasuku's habit of fiddling with his left index finger whenever he lies. Yet despite that, he still gives him the money. Tasuku asks why he would do that still, even if he knew the truth. Kotaro repeats what he once said at the orphanage, that he doesn't mind being betrayed and will believe him even if it's a lie, before handing him a bag full of coins, saying it's the money he earned all by himself while collecting garbage. Tasuku is shocked and asks why he would go this far, and Kotaro simply says he was happy when Tasuku said that they could live together, even if it was a lie, and that he will stay by his side because he is his friend. After hearing this, Tasuku finally breaks down, admitting that after leaving the orphanage, he trusted people who ended up using and scamming him, which led him down this path. As Kotaro confronts him, he begins to cry and apologize. A few days later, Kotaro is picking up beer cans while Karino and Kobayashi watch over him. Kobayashi mentions that Tasuku has left his shady job and found honest work, and is slowly paying back the money he borrowed from Kotaro. Karino wonders why Kotaro is still collecting cans then. After asking him about it, Karino learns that Kotaro is saving up to buy a home as big as a castle where he can live with Tasuku. Hearing that makes Karino a little jealous, but Kotaro just gives one of his brightest smiles and starts listing all the friends and neighbors he wants to live with there, saying he always wants to be together with everyone. Meanwhile, Tasuku is working at his new job that he got with the help of Ryota, but not before getting punched by him after finding out he tried to scam Kotaro. Tasuku thanks him for giving him another chance, and Ryota just reminds him that he isn't alone, and both he and Kotaro will always stay side by side. A few days later, Karino gets good news from his editor, who tells him his latest one-shot manga was a hit and that they want him to expand it into a short project. He's happy to hear that, but then his alarm rings since he has to pick up Kotaro from school. The editor asks if he can handle both a kid and the increased workload, and Karino confidently says he can. However, at school, a woman shows up claiming to be Karino's friend and says that she came to pick up Kotaro. The teacher is suspicious, so Kotaro tests her by asking her to describe one trait of Karino to prove that she knows him. She replies that he looks unreliable, which somehow passes the test, so Kotaro grabs his bag and leaves with her. The teacher asks her to pass along a pamphlet about an upcoming event to Karino, but she quietly pockets it. On the way back, Kotaro asks how she knows Karino, and she reveals that she is his ex-girlfriend and will be staying at his place for a few days. She introduces herself as Ake and Nita, and when they reach the apartment, they run into Karino, who is surprised because he didn't send Nita to pick up Kotaro. He scolds Kotaro for coming home with a stranger, then asks Nita if the teacher left any messages, but she says no. Then we get a brief flashback of how Nita suddenly showed up at Karino's place 3 days ago after fighting with her current boyfriend. While staying there, she looked around and noticed Karino had a promising new project that could become big, but after seeing him delay his work while taking care of Kotaro, picking him up from school, going grocery shopping, and even taking him to the bathhouse, she felt it wasn't good for his career. So later, Nita tells this all to Kotaro and says that she'll step in for Karino and accompany him for the next few days since he's busy. She doesn't think much of her words, but Kotaro starts feeling like he's a burden for Karino and wonders if he's forgotten their promise to go be rivals. That night, Kotaro tells Karino he doesn't need him to go to the bathhouse or take him to school every day since Nita will do it from now on. Nita also tells Karino to focus on his work while she takes care of things, but Karino refuses and still goes with them to the bathhouse, telling her he isn't going to change how he lives just because of a deadline. The next day, Nita takes Kotaro to school, but she's surprised when Kotaro still shows up and tells him to go home, but he insists on dropping Kotaro off no matter what. She then asks what will happen to his deadline. Karino says he pulled an all-nighter working on his manga, and even when she tells him to rest since the deadline is tomorrow, he says that he's fine and that he will still come no matter what. Nita starts to worry that he might remember the school event that clashes with his deadline, so she asks him if he has anything on his mind other than the upcoming deadline. Karino says no and that he doesn't have anything else scheduled for the coming days. Hearing that, Kotaro gets sad when he realizes Karino doesn't remember the school event and runs off. The next day, Nita tells Karino she's going grocery shopping, but secretly goes to the kindergarten instead. Kotaro and his friends perform their song, but he looks sad since Karino isn't there, until suddenly Karino shows up and tells him to smile. Kotaro then lights up and gives it his all. Nita nudges Karino asking why he came, and he admits he lied earlier and actually remembered everything, saying even if his deadline is tomorrow, he isn't missing this for anything. Nita tells him he doesn't need to go this far for a neighbor, but Karino says he may not be Kotaro's father and they may part someday, but he still wants to be there and make good memories with him. Nita asks if he would sacrifice his career for this, and Karino says it's because of Kotaro that he has come this far. Without him, he wouldn't be where he is now. Hearing this, Nita realizes her mistake. Later, she apologizes to Kotaro and tells him he isn't a burden. He is the reason why Karino works harder and makes better manga. She then tells Kotaro to support Karino again, and Kotaro moonwalks up to Karino saying that he has no choice but to support him because he's hopeless without him. Next, we get a flashback to when Kotaro used to live in his old apartment. One day, he rings the doorbell of a neighbor who is a fashion designer. The first thing he notices is all the stars on the man's clothes. The designer proudly says his designs are amazing, then notices Kotaro's dirty clothes and tells him to ask his mom to wash them properly, but quickly changes his mind and and decides to wash them himself. Kotaro thanks him and looks around his room, where the man shows off a shirt with the word God on it, calling it a godlike design. But Kotaro bluntly says it looks lame. The next day, Kotaro comes back with the same shirt, dirty again, and the designer washes it once more, then shows him the updated version of the God shirt, asking if it looks cooler, but Kotaro still calls it lame. A few days later, the designer brings a friend over to help him move out, and they find Kotaro getting scolded by another neighbor for ringing doorbells. Kotaro feels relieved seeing the designer, but his face drops when he learns that he's leaving. The man tells him not to ring random doorbells anymore since it bothers people, which makes Kotaro even more depressed. Then he invites him to see his final t-shirt design, but Kotaro runs away, saying it's probably lame too. The designer's friend realizes that Kotaro isn't being annoying, he's just lonely, like a kid he once knew whose parents were never home, so he went around knocking on doors for company. Hearing this, the designer regrets what he said earlier. The next day, he shows Kotaro his final design and gives him boxes full of those clothes. Kotaro still says it's lame, but thanks him, saying only he could pull off something like that, then hides his face and apologizes for bothering him every single day. The designer tells him to keep ringing doorbells, saying that even if most people don't open their doors, he shouldn't give up and should just keep going until he finds someone who will. Back in the present, Karino asks about the same shirt Kotaro always wears, and Kotaro says he loves it, even if it is kind of lame. The next day, we see a kid who delivers newspapers is running late because he failed to wake up on time. His last stop is Kotaro, who has already received 4 out of the 5 newspapers. Kotaro introduces himself and wishes the delivery guy a good morning. The delivery guy is touched and assumes Kotaro must have been raised well by his parents. The next day, the delivery guy arrives on time and checks his subscriber list, only to realize that Kotaro is the one subscribed to all 5 newspapers. And seeing only Kotaro's name there instead of any parents confuses him. So he talks to his manager, who tells him that Kotaro lives without his parents, meaning he ordered the newspapers himself. The delivery guy starts to think that Kotaro might have been pressured into buying so many newspapers because of his kind nature. So the next day, he asks if he wants to cancel some subscriptions, but Kotaro refuses, saying he needs them all. Then he asks the delivery man for a favor, telling him that if more than 2 days worth of newspapers pile up at his door, he should assume something happened to him and call the police. The man says alright. Later, Karino visits Kotaro for grocery shopping and asks if he's finished reading all the papers. Kotaro replies that he read them all, and since his parents' names were in the news, it means that they're still alive and safe. The next day, Kotaro is watching TV when he sees a crowded shopping district that reminds him of when his mom used to take him there. He quickly goes to Karino and asks for the address because he wants to go there the next day. Karino scolds him for thinking of going alone and promises to take him in the morning, but he ends up oversleeping, and Kotaro pouts before calling him a liar. Karino apologizes while getting ready, but Kotaro is still upset and says he'll set all of his clocks 2 hours ahead from now on. They get on the train, and Kotaro shows him notes about a shop he once visited with his mom, saying it had a blue roof and lots of trees nearby. Karino feels like that isn't enough to find the place, but Kotaro reveals that his real goal is the graveyard near the shop, where he wants to pay respects to his maternal grandparents. Kotaro says he went there once with his mom and wants to visit again, even though he never met them. They arrive and start cleaning the family grave. While doing so, Karino notices that Kotaro's mother's family name is Wamiya. Kotaro confirms it, saying his mother's full name was Sayori Wamiya, even showing him how it was written. But then Karino realizes the grave that they're cleaning actually belongs to Kotaro's mother. He's shocked and freezes, staying near the side where her name is written. Even after they finish cleaning, he refuses to move because he doesn't want Kotaro to learn the truth. When Kotaro tells him to come back to his side, Karino stays put, determined to keep him from seeing the name, because Kotaro still believes his mother is alive. Kotaro starts praying to his grandparents, saying he's been doing well since his last visit, asking them to watch over him, and requesting that if his mother ever comes to visit their grave, they tell her that he's living a good and healthy life. He then sees a woman with her daughter and starts missing his mom even more. He asks Karino if he'll ever see her again. Karino decides he has to lie, even if Kotaro might hate him later, so he tells him that he will definitely see her again. Kotaro believes him, saying Karino is a man of his word, and if he says it, he will surely believe him. As they return home, Karino asks Kotaro to take him along every time he visits the grave, while thinking to himself that he wants to be there for Kotaro whenever he goes, to stay by his side and support him, but more importantly, to keep him from finding out the truth and to tell his mother how well his son is growing up while sharing all of Kotaro's beautiful stories with her. Even though Kotaro doesn't understand his reasons, he promises to take Karino with him as long as he becomes his first loyal servant, and Karino readily agrees. Just then, Tamaru and Takei run into them, and Kotaro proudly announces that he has made Karino his servant, which immediately leads to them bickering as they head back to the apartment, and through it all, Kotaro wears a warm smile, happy with the life he has now. And with that beautiful moment, Kotaro Lives Alone reaches its conclusion. But the anime only covers 4 out of the 10 manga volumes, so a huge chunk of the story hasn't been adapted yet, which is honestly pretty disappointing. Before we wrap up, if you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely love the story of Takobi's Original Sin. It's another incredibly heavy and emotional anime that once held the #1 highest rated spot on the entirety of my anime list. With all that being said, if you want more content from us, be sure to check out the channel and join our Discord to hang out with us and other anime fans. Consider subscribing and leaving a comment below. It really helps us out a lot. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.